Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers of happiness, joy, and a centered approach to success in life. Seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation, and we're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Melissa, it's fall, and I gotta go pick up all the leaves out in the yard, but I can't find a rake, and the only thing I have is this fork.
Yes, and a fork would be very, very time consuming because just think how small the tines are and everything else like that. And there's also, in my yard, a whole lot of dog poop.
Yes, and I do have a bunch of spoons that could take care of that particular situation.
Well, that's super interesting. Yesterday, I had leaders hanging spoons off their noses.
Yes, and I'm sure they looked very, very silly and felt very awkward.
Yes, and there are many, many situations where I'm in the room where I make people feel silly and awkward.
Like all of our listeners feel silly and awkward. Like, what are they doing? We're playing the yes and game.
Yeah,
Explain to people
exactly.
what the yes and
I love this game.
yes and game is.
Yes and is one of the popular examples of doing improv as a way of communicating and connecting with people. It's one of the simplest ones, actually, and also one of the most fun.
So you just have been doing some leadership development stuff with a team, and you incorporate this kind of improv or this like style of things that make people kind of get out of their comfort zone.
Yes, I certainly do. Recently, I've been doing more of it because I've been working with a group for a whole year, and we're coming up to the close of this year. And in order to shift things up a little bit and have a little fun, I've been incorporating more activities like that, and it is really fun to watch people.
So
it is really fun to watch people.
So like, why exactly are you doing that? You know, like we think like in our professional lives, right? Everything should be like serious and professional and regimented and even, but you use this tactic to get people like fairly uncomfortable. Like, what is the purpose of breaking people out of their comfort zone?
Yeah, when people are broken out of their comfort zone, they actually are more authentically themselves. And when they're more authentically themselves, they have more fun. They laugh more, they connect with the people around them so much more, and their relationships become so much richer, even though they don't think that that's going to happen. That's what happens every time.
So
every time.
That's awesome. That it's more of like a connection thing than anything else.
Yes, and I've always said, and we've probably said it on the pod, adults are no more than grown-up kids. You know,
I don't think you've ever said that before.
Bigger kids.
That's awesome.
Oh, I haven't?
No.
Oh, adults are just kids in bigger bodies. That's all.
Just bigger clothes.
Under the guise of being so much more mature. Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I forever, one of the,
I
mean, you know how I run my organizations, but being ultra serious is not my primary goal at work.
Mine either. Actually, one of the authentic leaders' core values is fun. Fun and humor. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I think that we get in these mindsets, you know, where we're trying to be like prove our worth by being, you know, on top of it and a little more, I don't know.
Oh yeah, more serious.
I don't want to say rigid, but
you want to sound smart. You want to
intellectual.
Yeah. And those are all like facades, right? Those are all the fake things we do when we're not being authentic.
Act yourself.
Yep. I got to do an improv thing last week. I went to this little.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, like I went to this networking thing, and I wasn't. Well, first I wasn't super stoked to go because you know me, I'm like,
oh, isn't that different?
Talk to random people I don't know.
Be with
Great.
people.
But it was actually pretty fun because the speaker that they had was an improv group. And so this is a networking event for business professionals. And they brought in this improv group, and they did a lot of the same things. They had us play all these somewhat silly games. So we played the yes and game. So some people went up on stage and played the yes and game and tried to, extend that story for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And we did a clapping game where we had to we clapped, and then we clapped to the person sitting next to us, and then that person turned and clapped to the person sitting next to them, and we were in tables, so it went around 6 people. So you basically had to pass the clap around, which was really interesting because at first we really fumbled with it. It was actually kind of hard to coordinate, but then it sort of started grooving in, and then it became very rhythmic. And people started developing all sorts of strategies to make sure we clapped together at the same time. So all of this.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and we talked about the other week, the nonverbals, all this nonverbal communication started emerging. How were we going to coordinate the clap without talking? So,
yeah.
So that was super fun. But they said one thing that I really loved. They talked about when were we having the most fun? When were we laughing? When were we really enjoying the exercises? And the time when we were really laughing is when we were making the mistakes. No one was having.
Oh, that is
when we were executing really precisely.
That's so true. Yeah. That is so true.
When we were executing it really precisely and really concentrating, it wasn't actually all that fun.
Boring.
Yeah, but when we screwed it up, it was a riot.
I love it.
So,
what do you think that says? What does that say about the human being?
That we should fail, that we should screw things up, because that's kind of where the whimsy of life is. This idea that we try to be perfect all the time is ridiculous.
And when we try to be perfect in partnership with other people, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It doesn't ever happen that way anyway. And then it just leaves everybody feeling kind of spent and tight and stressed. And
yeah. So I wanted for a while I wanted to explore this idea with you, because I started researching. I actually started researching it this morning. And
no, you didn't. No.
Yeah. And I got totally stuck, which is weird.
Oh.
Yeah. So
that's weird. What did you get stuck on?
Well, okay. So I've been wanting to talk about this idea. I've been calling it co-creation, but that's kind of a weird word for it. But this idea that really amazing things happen when people collaborate on an idea. So I mean, this is an example, right? I don't think I couldn't do this podcast by myself. Maybe you could do the podcast by yourself, but
not a chance. Not
but
for
together,
not sustainably.
Together, you and I can do this podcast, right? You and I, we say this all the time when we look at some of our old work together. We're like, wow, look at that. Right. That's surprisingly good. We've surprised ourselves.
Actually, pretty good. We do over and over again.
So
was that us?
There's this idea that when people come in partnership with each other, especially around an artistic work, really amazing things can happen. This is my belief. I've been in partnership. You and I were in business partnership before. I had my previous business partner at Tightrope. There were some really fantastic things that happened during that period of time too. And so this idea that people can come together and create something amazing together, I think is really powerful. So I started trying to find artistic collaboration, or what is the magic that happens when two people come together to create something. And there is not a lot of stuff on the internet about that topic.
Okay, that's interesting. So, whenever we have a topic and we just generally say what we're going to talk about, then you and I never talk after that. We just create the title and then that's it, right? You then often research And then what I always do, I take 30 seconds and I always say to myself, what do I feel about this topic? Or how do I feel? What I actually did is I asked myself, what things need to happen for me in order to co-create? What feelings have to exist for me to be able to co-create well? Because I've been a part of all sorts of co-creations that I have been not proud of.
And so you might call them collaborations too, but collaborations feel like, I don't know, like collaborating something you do at the office and with a whiteboard.
Yeah. I mean, well, exactly right. So when you're talking about co-creation, and at least the way that I'm talking about it, let's just make sure we're talking about it in the same way. So are we just talking about like co-creation, meaning any relationship that you are participating in, right? You create something together, whether it be an energy, whether it be a vibe, whether it be a style of relationship, whether it be an outcome, right? I mean, there's a lot of that. Those to me are the markers of what you're talking about. Are you thinking the same thing?
Yeah, something like that. But that's where I was trying to like see what else kind of was out there with this idea that like we talk about collaboration and working with other people to kind of get common goals done. And that's certainly part of it. But like I was trying to articulate this like deeper feeling I have about it. There's to me, there's something energetically deeper about like working on something with somebody. And when like the spark of like inspiration and, and I don't know, ideas and creation like happens. I don't even really know how to put it into words.
Well, I feel like I think what I just feel with all the way that you're describing this is I just feel what you're really referring to is the connection. It's a deeper connection with other human beings. It's being so maybe this can help. Let me tell you the words that I came up with that I think are things that I feel are present in a strong co-creation. Openness with another person. And that doesn't come naturally for people. That's exposing. You can feel quite vulnerable trying to be open in a situation in which there isn't acceptance. So that's another is acceptance. Acceptance, other people accepting you, accepting the value that you're bringing, accepting the ideas that you have, accepting your contribution to whatever the co-creation is. Trust. I feel like you and I have such a trusted relationship that we can throw ourselves out there. Like we decided, let's do an improv to start our pod. And we're like, we never thought of that. Well, I don't know. You want to, I don't care. Should we do that?
Just try it.
And we just jumped right in. Yeah, we'll just try it. So I think trust is another one. There's some other things though that are kind of interesting, I think, that need to be present and connecting for people, and that is optimism. I don't feel like you can adequately create something, co-create something without optimism. And you can, but I always feel like you get substandard result, or you don't actually reach a conclusion because you don't feel enthusiastic or excited or optimistic that you can. So that's another one. So does that get a little closer?
It does. Like the other thing that can't be present when you're trying to make something with someone else is like an ego, right? Like it has to be like not about you.
That's a good one.
I actually read this one really good like improv quote. The goal of improv is to be positive, make your partner look good, and have fun.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Right?
Yeah, exactly right. And you know what's so funny is because when we first started talking about co-creating last night, when we first started talking about co-creating last night, we were like, hey, let's talk about this pod. Let's talk about co-creating. And then I just was like, yeah, improv is a really good way to do that. And then it was like, oh, wait, should we talk about improv? And then it's like, well, no, that's kind of weird. Most people don't even know what that is. You know, well, they may know what it is, but they don't know how or really what it is or how often it's actually used in life. Right. So I just think this has just been really interesting wandering around a little bit as we're creating this whole idea of what is it to co-create.
Yeah. So the other reason that this was on my mind is I did have like surprisingly strong opinion with one of my colleagues about this. So I have in my Vistage group, I've got one of my colleagues there and we kind of talk about this, like when you're like the CEO or the owner of a business, it's like pretty lonely. You don't really have, especially if you don't have partners or whatever. It's just kind of like you trying to run the whole thing, and you might have like a leadership team or whatever, but it's kind of like lonely at the top. That's the phrase. And we were talking about what he wanted to get done and his goals. And I was like, dude, you got to find someone else to like help you with this. I was just looking at like what he wanted to accomplish, and I was like, I don't understand how. And he's so stuck. He's so stuck in his head with like what he wants to do and all these options and blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, you need to go find someone to be like, your partner in this. Not like maybe like your legal partner in owning the business or whatever. And that's not what I meant. I was like, you need to find someone that walks, like walks with you every day. And the two of you try to figure out how to get from where you are to where you guys want to be. Because if you're walking that path alone, you're just going to be walking in circles. And that's where I was really getting on this idea where like partnerships can be extremely valuable. And this idea we have that you have this like single rogue person who is like brilliant in some way and walks this path alone and changes the world single-handedly.
There's no such thing.
Is really such a myth. And we like to make these icons like Elon Musk, right? Here's a brilliant engineer who's Steve Jobs. Like these are all brilliant individuals who have single-handedly changed the entire course of humanity. But even Steve Jobs had Steve Wozniak, right? Like it wasn't
exactly.
Like he had a partner, especially for the first many years. So, but I think
I'm in alignment with that.
There's a thing where people want to think you can do it all by yourself, but you usually can't.
Do you think people really feel like that, or do you think people feel that way? Do you think they actually believe that, or do you think that they convince themselves of that because the idea of exposing themselves in a relationship to co-create is too scary?
Yes, that one. You nailed it. I'm sure I think that's it.
I do too. Because, there has to be acceptance. There has to be. And that's why improv is such a fun thing, because it forces people to override their natural tendencies of fear and those emotions that are a little scary. And it forces them to just become totally open, exposed, and expect that the partner is going to continue to fan that flame so they can keep it going. They can keep it going by both being the same way.
We've been talking about business, kind of like a business context, like a lot. So my question is,
let's switch gears.
Do you and Mitch want to go do improv together?
No. Okay, fine. We'll try it. I don't know if I feel optimistic, open, trusting, and accepting. Poor Mitch. No, I think I was thinking that same thing as we were talking. My mind was absolutely wandering to that too, because we are in this kind of co-creation in every relationship of our lives. And I think that, especially when we do have partner relationships or spousal or girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever, what have you, those single partnerships, there is a level of co-creation that's happening every moment. And it's a much more subtle one, though, isn't it? And there are a lot more fears or a lot more things we pack around those relationships that I feel can make it more challenging to be yes and, like the game that we played, yes and. Like, how often are we like that with our single partnerships?
Yeah, it might feel like there's a lot more at stake than there is at work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. There's more at stake. What's at stake?
If you, well, that's a great question. I mean, so
Isn't
like if
it?
you mess,
What's at stake?
like if you do something that like ruins your marriage, that has big effects,
That's a big stake.
like on kids and finances and your whole entire world.
Yeah. But isn't it funny how I think it's competition that gets in the way. I think the opposite of co-creation is competition.
Because we're using co-creation. We could use collaboration, or cooperation, right? So
those are
right.
good words.
So the opposite of cooperation is competition.
Yeah. So in a marriage or in a long-term relationship, how many times do you make yourself yes and your partner versus how many times do you just naturally yes and? How many times are you naturally optimistic and want to 100% support whatever your partner's doing regardless? I don't think that happens all the time. I don't think that's a natural occurrence.
Yeah, so why?
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, why? Isn't it interesting to think about? I mean, I actually enjoy being wrong here. I would actually enjoy being wrong. But have you seen, well, let me ask it in a different way. Pick two couples that you know. Okay? Pick one couple that you just feel that there's always just a little something there, a little undercurrent, a little tension, maybe bickering, maybe, easily annoyed with each other. Pick a couple like that. And then pick a couple that they just are lockstep. They're naturally in alignment with each other. They just seem to finish each other's thoughts. They just seem to have a natural, easy breezy way of being together. Do you know examples of both sides of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So honestly, what I'm thinking about is, boy, I know a lot of examples of that first kind. But do I know many examples of the second kind? And I don't know as many. But the examples that are more of that, lockstep and easy breezy, easy acceptance of each other are older. They're older.
So they've maybe like learned over time or their relationship that like how to work together as a couple more effectively.
How to co-create better.
Yeah.
And put down some of the personal concerns of ego to jointly combine together to have a co-creation,
so
a collaboration.
That's really, like we said a couple times, like the ego getting in there and you're like thinking too much about your own needs, how you look, what you want. In a much more selfish way. Really hinders
and maybe it's
these
not
things.
even on purpose selfish. Yeah, maybe it's not even on purpose selfish. Maybe the person's not trying to be selfish. Maybe the person is just trying to be self-protecting because they're afraid that they won't be accepted.
Yeah. It's
because they haven't been in the past or they weren't raised that way or whatever.
It's like the ultimate step in like letting go.
Yeah.
The last step of letting go.
Oh my gosh, it really is. Yeah. And that's why I think too, like when you see, when you do like improv in a business setting, it's so obvious, like it's just so awkward to watch that and just feels so uncomfortable to watch. And yet it's those feelings those experiences that you see highlighted with two people that aren't naturally in co-creation, they're the exact same thing that we always have, but we are more subtle and better at hiding them in the relationships, the deeper relationships that we have. And again, I'm not even saying this is conscious decisions to hide and to, I don't think those are conscious choices, but I think that happens all the time.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right. So what are we going to do? We should go to improv class? No.
I don't want to. I'm just kidding.
We
See?
totally
exactly.
go to improv
Listen
class.
how surprised you were. We should absolutely sign up for an improv class. That sounds so much fun. And I've done them myself too. And oh my gosh, it is just, at first when you start, it's cringy and you just sweat. Like, it's uncomfortable at first, but then you just start laughing and giggling and it gets so fun afterwards.
Yep. Well, I'm going to say it again just to end the podcast, because I think it was this is such like a brilliant little line. So when in partnership with someone else, be positive, make your partner look good, and have fun.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well. Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them.
We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring.